Welcome and call to order. I am calling the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. on Wednesday, June 4th, 2023. Welcome to the first meeting of the Equity Board in 2023, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year.
This meeting is held in a hybrid format. We have board members and other participants attending in person, by computer, and others who may be attending by phone. We also have simultaneous Spanish interpretation in the background. Therefore, I'd like to start by providing some guidelines. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. If you are online, mute your microphone when not speaking. If having any technical issues, try joining the meeting using a different device like a smartphone or a tablet, or use the call-in information in the meeting invite to call into the meeting. Okay, roll call.
Roll call. Good evening, board members. This is Monica Negrilla. I heard from one board member who's excused tonight. Lucrecia Choto cannot make it. And I think that's it. Everyone else should be here, or if they're not, I have not heard from them. So would it be helpful to do introductions since we have guests tonight, just to go around and everyone to introduce themselves? We have our guests from the Issaquah School District with us tonight.
Sure. Good evening. I'll start. Ray Manahan, thank you for being here with us.
Kelly, would you like to comment?
Hello, I'm Kelly Mann. Thank you for being here. Happy New Year.
Hello, Lorna Gilmore.
Hi, I'm Preeti Modipian. Nice to see you.
And then board members online. Christina, would you like to go next with introductions?
Hola, buenas noches, Cristina Bonce a la orden. Un gusto conocerla.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. This is Cristina Bonce. It's nice to meet you all, and it's a pleasure at your service.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Elisa?
Hello, this is Elisa Stewart. Thank you so much for coming. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Elisa. And Tony?
Hello, this is Tony Curry. It's great to meet you. I'm looking forward to what you have to talk with us about today, and welcome.
Thank you. And with that, Ray, we also have one other board member who I don't see on the screen or in the room yet, and that's Helen Kibench. So we'll check in a little bit later to see if she may join us later. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, but before the recording, our chair, Shay Fleming, is stuck in traffic, so she should be joining us also a little bit later tonight in person. Okay, thank you.
And there's a note here to ask Monica if anybody has signed up for public comment, or if there's, I don't see anybody outside of what we've called out, but if there's anyone who's present to make a public comment.
Yes, we did not have anyone sign up for public comment, and we did not receive any submissions for public comments this month. So yes, we're good. And so with that, I think we can move to approve the minutes.
Okay. All right, I hope everybody had a chance to review the minutes. And with that, maybe just take 1 minute here to, if you hadn't reviewed them, take just a minute here to look at them. Notes from the last time we met, which is on December 7th. And with that, I ask for approval of the minutes from board members. Yeah. Lorna, Preeti, Kelly. I think we're good.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, with no proposed corrections, then we can consider the minutes approved unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, then we are on to our first agenda item, which I know I share the comments of everybody else here on the board. First item is the Issaquah School District Equity Department, presented by Elena Savadasan, correct? And I are there two individuals here? I see a Sharon Roy, equity specialist.
Sharon couldn't make it tonight.
Thank you, Elena, for being here.
Welcome, Elena.
Welcome. Good evening, everybody. My name is Elena Sivadasan, and I'm the Executive Director of Equity for the Issaquah School District. And I also have the privilege of working with Lorna Gilmore, who is a part of the Equity Department as well. And my, I guess presentation tonight in talking with Monica is really just focused on what are a few key ways that perhaps the city of Issaquah could consider partnering with the Issaquah School District in terms of some of the equity needs that we see within our district. So if you don't mind, I'll kind of just talk about about three key areas. And then if there's time for questions or you need clarification, feel free to ask. Does that sound good? Okay. One of the first areas that we really see as a significant need in our district is for both before and after school aged care. So as a school district, many people don't realize, but we do serve pre-K through 12th grade. So we that is kind of our population, and as probably many of you know, before after school childcare is incredibly expensive. I know when I had both of my own children in childcare, we were paying close to $3,400 a month, which is just an astronomical fee and is often out of reach for many of our parents. And so just to give a little background, every elementary school in the Issaquah School District does offer before and after school care. And currently the district serves about 1,400 students in that program. And we provide close to 60 scholarships, like free of charge for families. And then the rest is based on sort of a sliding scale in terms of payment. But right now, the district is currently sitting at an almost 400 student wait list for families that need to access either before or after school care, with after school care being the biggest area of concern or need for our families. One of the things too to point out is that for our families that use coupons from DSHS for childcare, there are currently no childcare facilities in the city of Issaquah that are open and have capacity to take on more students. So for our families that receive that coupon and cannot get into our before and after school care, they're really priced out of any other option to provide childcare for their students. And so it often leaves our students in precarious or dangerous situations. I know, having been an elementary principal in the district prior to coming into this role, I often was dealing with situations where we had families that needed to work and did not have secure childcare, and their kids were really too young to be left at home alone. So this is an area that we desperately need support in as a school district. We are looking to, excuse me, branch into seeing if we can offer before and after school care at the middle school, and then also maybe for some of our pre-K classrooms. But again, it's getting staffing and those pieces up and going. So that is just one area to bring to your attention that is a great need within our school district. The second area that we also see a critical need in is for mental health support. One thing that I want to point out is that while all of our schools have school counselors, our school counselors are not licensed mental health therapists. That's not their role within the building. So sometimes that's confusing to people who don't work within the school district. I think they believe or think that our counselors are able and have the degree or certification to provide mental health therapy, and they really do not. So our counselors at school focus more on like social emotional lessons, maybe some like friendship groups, sometimes some grief or like divorce groups. And then once you get into secondary, they're really focused on credits and graduation, and maybe some like momentary crisis intervention. But again, their role and their training is not to provide long-term sustained mental health support. We have, though, however, contracted as a district with Swedish Mental Health, and we have four full-time mental health counselors. I'm so sorry. At our elementary schools, and we have 16 elementary schools in the district. So as you can imagine, these four full-time mental health counselors are stretched really thin. And then we have 4 counselors at the high school, but a couple of those counselors are on leave. And they have to be, those leaves have to be replaced through Swedish Mental Health, which sometimes can take months and months at a time. And then we have like 5 mental health counselors at our middle schools, and we have 6 middle schools. So since COVID, the need for mental health support has really significantly increased in our school district, and that's just in an area of great need that we just want to raise to the city's attention, and as like a potential partner with us. I also think finding mental health services that are able to provide support in languages other than English to help support our linguistically diverse families is also an area of significant need as well. So the school district is trying, but it's we just don't have the capacity to fill all the need that is out there in our district. And lastly, what I would say is that there is a critical need for social workers. And to be really specific, a critical need to have social workers in our communities that maybe are have Section 8 housing or a part of like Imagine Housing. I'm not sure all that that has gone through when these when the Section 8 apartments or the Imagine Housing is opening up. But really, what we see is that these families need more than just access to affordable housing. They need access to transportation. They need access to job coaching, to parenting classes, to childcare. I mean, the list goes on. And oftentimes what we see is that there are critical issues that arise in the communities. And then oftentimes that comes and spills over into the school day as well. And so having social workers to help support in those communities would be key. I've seen that firsthand when I was the principal at Endeavor Elementary. We had a social worker that supported the community in Highland Gardens. Endeavor Elementary was also able to provide staff support to help with tutoring and just providing support to parents. But having that social worker on site was crucial and provided so much support to our families and to our students right outside of the school day and on the weekend. So those are so before and after school care, mental health support, and social workers are really some key areas that as the school district we could use some partnerships from the city around in terms of really serving and supporting those families within our community. I do know that I'm working on a tight time frame of 6:30, so I wanted to stop there and see if people had questions or needed some things to be clarified.
Yeah. So this is Preeti. A question, and I guess, can you share with us the students who are most disproportionately impacted by these issues, like some of the demographic characteristics and things like that?
So I think that in terms of that would be our students that are experiencing poverty or that are honestly are students and families of color, specifically our African American and Latinx families. And then I think just in terms of like the mental the mental health, I mean, that's all of our students really. There's not like a specific demographic that it's targeting more than others. And for the before and after school care, again, that's something that reaches beyond demographics, but I do think specifically impacts our families that are low income.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cristina, I see your hand up.
Hola, buenas noches. Me gustaría que me aclarara cuál es la estrategia que está tomando para asegurarse que las familias que realmente necesitan este apoyo, ya sea lo que comentó en salud mental, en trabajo social o en ayuda para ¿cuál era el otro? Para cuidado antes y después de la escuela de los niños, están recibiendo realmente esa ayuda, o sea, que las personas realmente necesitadas están recibiendo la ayuda.
So, what is the strategy of all the programs that you have, child care after and before school, social services, mental health services, to make sure that the persons that really need that support are the ones who are getting it?
That's a great question. This is Elena speaking again. I think we have a few different strategies. So I know with the mental health support, I know that there has to be a referral form that is filled out, and then the counselor, the mental health counselor, along with the administrator and what we would call like our tier 2 or tier 3 intervention team at the school, which often consists of like a counselor, a school psychologist, the administration. They would be looking at the referral form and prioritizing students based on need and area of need and like the criticalness of the situation. So There is strategy and thought put behind it. It's not first come, first serve by any means. I think with before and after school care, I think that is that's probably an area that is more of a first come, first serve basis. And I know that like families that have been enrolled before, get to the first chance to re-enroll again. And so that's a system that is more first come, first serve. But I think in terms of financial access, there are any family that has been granted access to the program but needs a scholarship gets it. They're not turned away. And then the school district does not currently have social workers that we employ, so there is not a strategy there. I know that we are looking into the possibility of how to get maybe a couple social workers hired, but we're also facing a significant budget crisis in the district where we're looking at needing to potentially eliminate, 15 to 18 million dollars out of our budget this next school year. So.
Muchas gracias por su aporte. Lo relacionado a mi pregunta fue porque hace tiempo yo apliqué y creo que sí hace falta y es un área de oportunidad muy buena el que todos estén en el mismo canal de cuál es el proceso y que se entienda tanto como desde adentro como los padres o toda la sociedad que estamos del otro lado, ¿no?
Thanks so much for your answer. I just want to let you know that I applied for the services last year, and yeah, I understand the difficulties. I just want to comment that it's important that the channels of communication and how to go about applying are clear, not only from the outside, the parents, society in general, but also the inside. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with me. And I think as a district, we really need to be open and we need to rely on feedback from our families and our community about what is going well and then what is not going well within our district. So I appreciate your feedback, and I will also make sure and share that with our individuals that oversee before and after school care. And I also know that just our communication, especially two-way, is something that we need to improve on as a district. So thank you for sharing with me.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Do you any other board members, questions or? No?
This is Kelly. I was thinking about, so this is not the topic you brought up, like, the issues you brought up are all important issues. The one that really flashed for me was the 15 to 18. I used to be a part of this school system, and the 15 to 18 million dollar cut will often be to those who can least afford it. And so I think that, at least on a personal level, but probably for this organization, is a great interest to us to help with whatever we can, or at least me, with keeping those cuts from mental health, early learning, and the other resources that are being put forward for those who need it the most. Because it was going to take a bite. It's a lot of money.
Yes, I appreciate your your honesty there, and also your commitment to support. I think these significant budget cuts are something that I mean, the amount of money is something that I haven't grappled with in my 16 plus years in the district. And so I think it is an uncertain time for all of us. I am hopeful with the new superintendent that has come in, and her commitment to equity and to looking at how we are spending our resources, not just financial, but staffing, time, priorities, those pieces, through an equity lens. And so I'm hopeful that that lens will be used in this process, and as we're looking at what kind of cuts we're going to make. But I do appreciate your honesty and your sharing there.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Elena. I know you are on a short timeline and you need to head out. We so appreciate your time with us tonight, and I hope that this is just the beginning of a conversation and continued collaboration that we hope to have with your department and the school district. So board members, welcome, Shay. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much for the privilege to be able to come and speak with you. And I too look forward to a continued and growing partnership with the city. And, you know, these are all of our families. And I know that we are committed together in creating the best, most inclusive, supportive, welcoming environment for our families. And so any ways that we can help partner, we're excited to do that. And our lines of communication are always open from the district's end as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Thanks for being here. And with that, welcome, Shay.
Thank you. Hey, it's so good to see you all after such a long time, it seems like.
Happy New Year. So nice to see you. So Ray graciously accepted, and he cheered. Facilitated the meeting so far. Thank you, Ray.
Oh, I'm sure he's been amazing. And please forgive my tardiness. Traffic has been nuts lately, I have to admit. But I guess we would be moving on to the next item in the agenda. Is that right, Monica?
That is right.
Alrighty, so we're headed into government training, and Tisha is gonna help us with that.
Welcome.
I just wanted to know, like, after the police discussion, we did have conversation.
Mhm.
I was just wondering if there was gonna be conversation on what Elena presented before, because I know that was one of the factors that we're waiting before we make the final decision about our work plan.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's gonna be at that time, or if anyone wanted to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, I think so. We don't have, exactly one of the reasons why we didn't finalize the work plan for 2023 was that we didn't have a chance to hear from the school district, and we also needed some work to complete on the items that you identified as priorities. So we are going to bring that back next month. However, if the board is interested in having a brief follow-up conversation after what you heard from Elena, I think that's absolutely totally appropriate. Or if you also want to just postpone it for next month as we discuss more and see how we may or may not be able to partner with the school district. As I was listening to Elena, all of the things that Elena mentioned, for example, are all great human services related that we are also addressing human services. So another thing to consider, if you may recall, we said that we would like to have a joint meeting with the Human Services Commission in the upcoming couple of months. So I think that also it's a good opportunity for us to discuss with the commission in detail, just the school district and how we can continuously collaborate. So a few options you have for members on this. as a staff recommendation. Of course, if you would like to have any follow-up thoughts now, it would be great so we don't forget and we take notes. But I would recommend a more in-depth conversation, either at least next month or at the joint meeting with the Human Services Commission, or both. Any quick processing for a few minutes, 5 minutes or so, if you would like to have?
So I could, I guess what I'm thinking about after, what Elena shared is, I'm just thinking jurisdictions and so what is, the role of the city? And so we've heard, like Monica, as you said, there's some, health and human services related things that Elena specifically mentioned. And then I know when we had the folks from Right to Breathe, they talked about the school resource officers and how students are impacted by their presence. And so I think that's another touch point, that connects with the police department possibly. I don't know if there's other kind of dimensions of how the school district or students specifically engage with other, services provided by the city that we should be thinking about as well. So that's kind of what's going on in my head. What else is out there? Even though I think, Elena's really shared these more health and human services related.
And they're always touching, right? Because the human services has such a good touch with equity, right? Because always the most impacted are those who typically need health and human services.
It could be interesting when they go through these cuts, which are coming. I know a lot about education. There's going to come. The school districts have historically do equal cuts, right? It'll be across the board because it's so painful, and then it's going to be painful. It's brutal. However, it would be interesting to have a statement saying, please do equity. Right? That is something we can do. As bring it to the council to see if they say it.
Right. So yeah, you could consider making a recommendation or advising the mayor and city council on a statement regarding equity. So it's something like that, you can make a recommendation to them.
Yes, and I think it would be I know that the super is a new super, and that is very different. I had the opportunity to help interview her, and will do her best. And having outside support would be very, I'm sure, would help her. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So that's where I think we can link really strongly.
Yeah, and it does go back to what Pretty was saying so well about for us to also clearly understand the role that we have as a city, and also the role that you have as a board, and where can you inform or help influence. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, and it looks like Christina has a question. Christina, please come up mute.
Hoy ando muy platicadora.
I'm very chatty today.
Me vino a la mente la reducción del capital. Entonces, vengo recordando que cuando llegué aquí, algo que me sorprendió, o que al menos no recuerdo haber visto mucho en México, es la parte del voluntariado. Entonces, sería bueno tal vez explorar un poquito más que así como se hace en algunas escuelas aquí, se involucre más a los padres para el servicio social que se va a requerir o se está requiriendo ya en las escuelas.
So I was thinking about the budget cuts, and I'm thinking about how they dealt with that issue back in Mexico. Oftentimes, it was a lot of volunteer work from the parents, and I know that some schools do have volunteer parents, and so I'm wondering if we can look into that to see if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, honestly, I know that the PTO does a lot for the school district to kind of bridge the gap wherever they can. And there are a lot of parents that are willing to volunteer, me being one of them, to try to just help kind of merge what we can as cost effectively as we can. So I'm sure we could probably even look into partnering with the PTO to see if maybe there's some suggestions that they would have that we could use to help. Anyone else? Alrighty, then I think we can move on to Tisha's presentation if she's ready.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Tisha Geezer. I'm the clerk. I know I've seen you all a few times now, and I hate to interrupt your important work. This is important too, but it's just more, a little more administrative. So I'm here for your annual Open Public Meetings Act training, and then, which I think I won't need the full 30 minutes for, so I'll aim to do that, cover that in more like 10 to 15 minutes, since you've all been serving on the board at least a year, if not more. And then we're going to talk a little bit about a virtual attendance policy and hoping to get some feedback from you all on that tonight. So bear with me. I know this is some redundant information, but let me pull up my slides here, try and move through it quickly, and then answer any questions. So as you know from when I've spoken in the past, we have a couple state laws that have certain requirements for our city council and our advisory boards and commissions, and part of the clerk's office role is to help protect both the city and our elected officials and volunteers from inadvertently or advertently not following these two laws. So these two laws, the Open Public Meetings Act and Public Records Act, we refer to them as the sunshine laws, because they're really designed to just encourage access and transparency to government. So again, this is why we come to you and why we come to you each year, just kind of get it back in your mind as you approach a year ahead of meetings and communicating with each other. So the Open Public Meetings Act, you are very aware that all your meetings are open to the public, and we're continuing to provide for that virtual options if you choose to come here physically or watch a recording of your meeting or participate via WebEx. So we're always publishing all of your meeting information in advance so people know when you're meeting and what you'll be discussing. I know you've had some special meetings. It sounds like you might have another one coming up with the Human Services Commission, and those meetings do have, and I think I'm skipping ahead in my slides here, but I'm just gonna speak naturally, and the slides will follow. The thing that we like to mention to you about your special meetings is that under state law, you're limited to discussing topics on the meeting agenda for your special meetings. So at tonight's meeting, you could, if there was an item that someone wanted to discuss and you wanted to sort of move that the agenda be amended to add this discussion topic, you could do that. This is one of your regular meetings, 6 o'clock, first Wednesday of the month. At your special meetings, that's not appropriate or allowed. I think the rationale there is that people know when your regular meetings are, and so they know where to be if they're interested in your work, but with your special meetings, that might be more difficult. So you're confined to certain topics, and I know Monica works with the chair to help make sure your agenda is reflects the work that needs to be done that night. So that's something we'd like to share with you. Past this here. We're going to move past executive sessions. Those are certain closed sessions. Mostly our city council uses these. They have some reasons under state law by which they can meet in a closed session. It's usually to discuss things that are sensitive, confidential, litigious. Okay, so we'll spend a couple minutes on this slide. So with your 9-member board, 5 of you constitute a quorum, and I believe you're aware, but just to remind you that if you are attending events like local or regional events on topics pertaining to the equity board, that we'd like to avoid having 5 of you at any one of those events. And so just coordinating with each other if you're getting a feeling that there might be more of you, and then having maybe a board member report out if there's broad board interest. Also, I want to talk a little bit about, let's talk about social gatherings are allowed, and traveling is allowed. Just make sure if you have a social event or find yourself in a social setting that you avoid topics that could come before the equity board. And then let's talk a little bit about email, because I think that that's one of one of the places where the Open Public Meetings Act can occasionally get inadvertently infringed upon. So obviously, sometimes you're going to want to communicate with each other outside of a meeting. The best way to do that is through Monica. It actually helps us with both of our state laws because the next one we'll talk about a little bit is the Public Records Act, and the fact that it's really helpful to the city if we have correspondence that you are embarking on as part of your board membership, because we could receive a public records request for communications between one or more or all the equity board members. So we appreciate being copied on emails if you're emailed directly as a board member, either forwarding it or copying Monica in, so that we now have a record of that communication. Also, when you're emailing, we want you to avoid having sort of discussions or weighing in on things outside of a board meeting. It can be really tempting, especially if you've already had an initial discussion at a board meeting, but we really want to save all board discussion at an open meeting. You want to have a conversation or an email exchange with one or two board members. That is okay. We just don't want to hit that number 5. We don't want to have 5 people getting looped in. And something to think about is that we also, to meet the spirit of the law, we also don't want members sort of gathering other board members' input outside of a meeting. So that can look like one board member reaching out to another to say, I have this idea I'm thinking of, like, what do you think? Do you think this would float with the rest of the board? Getting their feedback, then going to a second, third, and fourth board member to kind of do the same and possibly share what they've heard. Oh yeah, so far I've talked to a few board members, this is what I'm hearing, because you're kind of building consensus and dialoguing outside of a meeting, even though it's not with a quorum at one time. That's it's considered a string meeting, and there has been some case law on it, and it's something we want to avoid. So just be thinking of that. I think it can happen so naturally. So just, it's best if you are talking with one or two board members, great, and then bring it to a meeting for discussion. Any questions about that?
For me, that brings up the question of social media and how we can inadvertently kind of connect with each other there. Do you have an example on how we can just if I see that Lorna has posted something and then I comment on it and then Ray again comments on it later, and it's kind of city related or not even necessarily board related, but could potentially be a board topic, are we best to just avoid that in general?
It would be nice. I mean, so like a couple possibilities if that were to occur. So, we could have, if we have someone who's sort of a watchdog and observes that there's multiple board members kind of communicating on social media about something, that could kind of, it may not look great. So even if we haven't technically, if it hasn't been 5 members all commenting on that one post, again, in Washington State, there's a real high bar set for these laws. They're meant to be construed liberally, and they're ruled on liberally. And so cities often, particularly with the Public Records Act, that one is more common than cases against the Open Public Meetings Act. But we just want to be careful. So I would say, I don't want you feeling like you can never comment on anything. You're having to scroll through if there's hundreds of comments or likes to see if there's any other board member. But I do, we at this point aren't prepared to have our boards have their own social media presence. And we would want to talk to anyone who was wanting to do something like that and kind of coalesce board members around topics. The clerk's office, we'd want to talk with you about that. And would have some concerns. So be careful, be mindful of that. But,
Yeah, and I only brought that up because every now and then I cross paths with some of the other board members, and we're not necessarily talking about anything board related, but who knows, it can happen.
Yeah, and then, I guess one other point is, make the statement, but maybe avoid that, like, replying to each other, or sort of the discussion is what we want to avoid outside of a meeting. So yeah, that's a very, very real question. All right, so we talked about just limiting discussion outside of a meeting. It's possible that Monica might want to gather some input before a meeting to help prepare. So she might say, please provide me with your input and I'll then summarize it at the meeting. That is okay. You can respond to her email. That actually can be very useful to help you prepare for a meeting. If you have communication that you just think is of interest to the board and want to share, again, I encourage you to route it through Monica, just because she can then also help stop things if she sees that people are replying and saying, really good article, what do you think about, we want to try and minimize that outside of a meeting. As much as possible. And so if you're ever looking for tools, if you're finding that you're bumping up against a need to discuss something, we can look at your agenda and creating a kind of I think you have an announcement section, but we really want to steer as much conversation and discussion towards these meetings as possible. So that the public can be here and observe their government in action. So there are some penalties for violations of the Open Public Meetings Act, which is why we do train all the boards on it each year, and it can impact any action that you've taken. That would mostly be if you held a rogue meeting, which I don't see happening. Okay, and then we don't have any new members here tonight. When we do, I like to point them to the Code of Ethics, but that's something that you should have received in the past. All right, so let's just talk for a couple minutes about the Public Records Act. This is a big part of our, the clerk's office function as the city. We are providing records for people who ask us for them every day. And so your records that you create and use in the course of your role on the equity board are considered city records and can be requested. So this slide has a lot of information, but I'm just going to give you some things to just be mindful of. So most of your materials are generated, or not necessarily generated, but they're coming to you in the form of your agenda packet or things you might receive by email from Monica. If you're creating documents for a meeting, that we would want to get as much as possible in that agenda. It's also all of the records pertaining to the equity board are archival records, and they are kept in perpetuity by the Washington State Archive. So we try and keep as much of your materials together and posted on our website so they're accessible. If you generate something and as you work on the board, whether it's your notes or whether it's some kind of other document that you're sharing with others, just keep it all together in one location on your computer. Because if we were to receive a public records request for anything that went to the equity board or the equity board discussed or pertaining to a particular issue, we'll reach out to you and ask if you have anything that we are not in possession of. So just keep it organized. If you take notes, notes are in the category of records. We have a lot of rules about how long we can keep records at the city, but notes are considered transitory, which means once they're not useful to you anymore, you can get rid of them. So please feel free to get rid of notes. If you generate something more substantial for the board, please keep it. And provide it to Monica before or after a meeting so that we can add it to our record for the equity board. Communication, you may be emailing directly with individuals pertaining to your board work, in which case the city doesn't have a copy of those emails. So two options: loop us in, loop Monica in, that email will be in our city server, or be organized with your email and you keep them in a folder or particular place. So if you were asked, you could provide them. Some of our advisory board members do get separate email accounts for their board work. That's also a possibility. But as long as you can easily locate them if asked, that's what's important to us. All right, so that's all I have. Any other questions?
Anyone online have questions?
Looks like we don't have any hands.
Okay.
So I will say, Tisha, we can probably move on to the attendance policy.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. I have some slides here to keep me on track as well. Let me share those real quick. All right, so a little background. You're very familiar with the background about, you were a born digital board.
Yeah.
So just some background on this, so state law requires we have an in-person meeting location for any board that's subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, like you and like all of our boards. And during COVID, there was a string of different governor's proclamations and things that sort of temporarily did away with that requirement. In July, as of July 1st of this year, those were all taken away. So the board, the legislature did add a provision, if we have a pandemic situation again, we can all go virtual, and they've kind of put that into state law. So that's nice to have that there. But in the meantime, we need to have a physical meeting location. So the mayor required, heavily encouraged board and commission members to come in person to attend meetings after that time. I think your first in-person meeting was maybe in September. And we needed a little time to get ready for that transition. So, and over the past few months, we've received feedback from board and commission members and observed a continued interest for board and commission members to participate virtually. So for most of our boards, including the equity board, the city committed to maintaining this virtual element. So we purchased equipment that's in this room here. We trained staff on how to schedule their WebEx meetings, and that's a commitment we wanted, particularly to allow the public to participate. But again, our observation has been there's been some benefit and interest by board members to continue that. So the mayor asked me to draft a policy for the board. So the boards don't have any language about this. This is a new territory. So your rules and regulations don't talk at all about remote meetings or attending remotely. So she asked that the policy, which is what I'm bringing to you today, focus heavily on in-person attendance. I think she really sees value in kind of the synergy that comes from meeting in person. I think I know we don't have any members of the public here in person, but also the feeling that when there are members of the public in person, there's value in having, members sitting in seats that are in the room with them. And it's been something she's wanted to emphasize to all our boards and commissions. And the draft policy really reflects that. I'm going to walk through some aspects of it, and I will share with you that I've attended 4 other board meetings of other advisory boards thus far. 2 of them took the policy pretty much as is, but the other 2 are looking for more flexibility with virtual attendance, as it's been working well for their boards. So I think every board's having a little bit different experience and different expectations. This is about what you expect of your fellow board members. So let me talk about the points in this proposed policy, and I'd love to hear your feedback. I received some feedback already from Alyssa, and which I can share, she can share, or I can share. And then I'm expecting that if there are changes, I would bring back a revised version for the February meeting. So with that, an overview is that the policy says that a quorum of the board, so 5 of you, would be in person for each meeting. So tonight, what do we have 5 of you here in person tonight. The policy says that if you're attending virtually, you can fully participate in the meeting, but you need 5 to be in person unless you have multiple vacancies on your board. So one of the reasons for that is, as I mentioned, the mayor's emphasis on that in-person attendance. The second one is that if we have technology issues, and say we had 4 board members here in the room that traveled here, and then everyone else was virtual, but there was a technical issue, like, maybe WebEx ran an upgrade the night before, or maybe power was out on Squawk Mountain, or who knows what it might be. The meeting couldn't occur. And so there's a little value in having a quorum here, so regardless of the virtual element, the meeting can proceed. With that said, we've had a lot of stability. I mean, we have had very few issues with our virtual meeting system thus far. But that is why that provision is in there, in the draft policy. And then you basically request, you reach out to Monica, preferably 5 days in advance, and just say, hey, I've got, I need to, I don't have a child at home, or my car's, not available to me, or I'm dealing with a sprained ankle, or whatever, I have a cold, whatever it might be, and kind of get that permission to attend virtually. You'll notice in the policy it emphasizes that the virtual attendance is if you can't make it physically. So, there's some examples in what that here as to what that could mean. But the intention is that if you're able and well to come physically, that you would, and if you're not, that there would be a mechanism for you to participate virtually. And then the policy also emphasizes camera on, so that the group in the room can tell that you are there and engaged in the meeting, and that the chair would need to be an in-person attendee. So if the chair was virtual, then the vice chair or another member would serve as chair for that meeting. And then there's a few other minor changes here to your location, kind of acknowledging that your regular meetings will have that virtual element on an ongoing basis. You have special meetings or social, that might be like a social gathering or a meeting at another facility. We might not have that virtual element, but we would plan to for your regular meetings. And then there's just some language added to acknowledge that public and staff presenters may be virtual. There's one other provision that I'd like to mention, which is a preference to, you have 3 alternates. So if you are missing a few regular members and need alternates, there would be a preference to the alternates who are physically here. So if you had 2 open seats, that could look different, and you have 2 alternates here and 1 alternate virtually, then the 2 alternates here would be the ones to serve in those seats. So that's one other provision in this policy. And then just your options tonight, if you're comfortable and have minimal changes, you could certainly proceed to adopt this. If you have changes, I'd like to process those. I'm working on a couple of the other boards revisions now, and I'd like to try and ensure as much alignment as possible. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts on the policy. With that, that's my presentation.
Thank you, Tisha. Does anyone have anything so far? I didn't see any hands, so.
I have hands.
Alyssa. Oh, okay, we have a few.
Alyssa, she can go
Yes.
first.
Alyssa, please come off mute for us.
Just a question to clarify, you were talking about the precedence of alternates in person versus virtual. Is there also a precedence where if it's a voting situation and there's an alternate present versus a regular member online, does the alternate take precedence?
That's a great question, Alyssa. And initially that was something we were considering, but an observation was that it became really complicated. Honestly, that was the largest factor. And really I think the other thing is that we're saying that if you're attending virtually, you're fully participating. So whether that's as a regular member or as an alternate, you're there, you have every right that you would have if you were in the meeting room. So no, that's not a provision in this version.
All right, and I see, Preeti, did you want to go first? Because I saw you before Tony.
Sure. I had a comment that I'm still thinking through, but I feel like with the hybrid policy, the way it's written, there could be an impact where folks who have maybe like mobility issues might be discouraged from even applying to participate on a board or commission because of the in-person requirement. And historically that might have happened. And so we have an opportunity now to be more inclusive with the policy. And so I would hate to have that kind of discouraging closed off access continue if we can change it now. Just something I think that might be worthwhile to think about.
Thank you, Preeti. Tony, are you ready?
I am actually pretty. You made good point. That was one of the points I was going to bring up. So fantastic. So I second that. I do have a question. So hypothetical situation. So let's say, and first of all, apologies, board members. I am sorry. I've been turning my camera on and off. I'm just not feeling well. So I figured that you guys don't want to see me coughing and sneezing on camera. So, but at any rate, that's why I'm disconnecting my camera at certain points. But my hypothetical situation. Let's say a number of individuals show up for a meeting in person. Maybe there's two or three, and then that's it. And everyone else is online and the public is there, should the meeting then be canceled because there's just not five there?
So this is it's a great question. It's part of like what we're talking about tonight. So right now we have no rules about this. So really anything between September and now, whoever shows up in whichever way the meeting is proceeding. And certainly the virtual policy could be drafted that way. It could be drafted to say, and I think one of our boards is leaning towards that, just really open. There's been a lot of, I think everyone, not even just board members, but in our workplaces, we're thinking through this, right? Is it meaningful to come if everyone else is virtual? So do we want some kind of minimum? Should there be some kind of preference? Is it okay for one member to never show up to the meeting room physically, or not? And these are just important things to talk through. So under the proposed policy, the meeting wouldn't proceed if there are only two board members in person. The policy says that a quorum of the board will be in person unless you have multiple vacancies. If there are virtual board members, they can fully participate, but you still need those 5 people in the room for that to happen. But that is something we can play with. So the board, and what I'm looking for tonight are, what are the points in this policy that you're not quite comfortable with and might want a change. One of those could be that requirement that 5 be in the room. One of them could be sort of the list of accepted reasons to participate virtually. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, and Tisha, has there been like an outline on what accepted reasons for not participating in person would be? Have we considered like whether childcare outside of, general life things?
And this, okay, this policy, my apologies, because the policy that I received some feedback from one of the boards to insert some rationale into the language, and I see that it's not here. It was in the staff report that accompanied this, I believe, where it emphasized that gave some examples of reasons that would be permissible to not attend in person. So this policy here says, if a member is unable to attend a meeting in person, and that's all it says. So that's very broad. That's subject to interpretation. The examples that I've been providing and that were included in the staff report are things that might prohibit you from coming. So that could be a transportation issue, that could be a health issue, that could be quarantine, recent surgery, attending a business meeting. We really don't, we want our board and commission members to request an excused absence if you're really unwell, or if if you're taking medication because you're recovering from something, or if you're on vacation with your family. So what I think one of our goals was to try and identify, so what's that window of time when you're not doing those things, in which case we just have fun or we'll see you when you're better, but things that might prohibit you from a meeting. So childcare, transportation, health issue have been the points that I've been speaking to, and I apologize because I see that they aren't here, and I did receive that feedback from another board. So we should talk about that, and I can make a revision to reflect what you all think are acceptable reasons to attend virtually.
Because I think, as Preeti said, I think from the get-go, it needs to be down that lack of transportation to attend an in-person meeting is not grounds for not applying to be, because we just started less than a year ago, right?
A year ago,
a year ago.
a couple of months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as board members start ending their term and we're starting to look at new people, because I know as we came in, we all came in virtually. So we came in under very different circumstances, and a lot of us were more able to come because we had the option of doing all the meetings in Zoom for the foreseeable who knew when. And so I just want to make sure it's clear that it's not that the board member has to, like, there's a certain time limit that they have to come. Like, what if they can't come for the 2 years they're on the board? Is that still going to be okay? And how is their voice going to be received through the course of the meeting? Is that going to be a limiting factor? Is there going to be some kind of, penalty, or they can only not attend and they'll have to find transportation for the other meeting? And I think being an equity board, I would love if we could be more open to the idea that no matter what, if you lack transportation, you could attend. And same thing with childcare, because I know from my work experience, I've worked with a lot of single parents or working parents who lack the ability to have childcare. And so again, in equity, it feels like those are the voices that we really want to hear clearly. So I would hate for them not to be able to be included in these conversations from the get-go. So any kind of framing where you could only miss 3 meetings in person or something like that.
Yeah, I think a percentage would kind of make it a little bit easier to say, I can commit to this, considering I have some room, 25% of the meetings, maybe I won't be able to make it to in person, but I can attend those virtually. Or even, for example, in my case, it may be a maternity leave situation where I'll have to be out for a few weeks and may miss a few meetings. And that doesn't necessarily mean I won't attend virtually, but I probably won't be in person because it'll take a while to recover. So I do kind of wonder if we could staple that down a little bit more to allow some flexibility, but say, hey, we still need you to be here more often than not. Because to your point, I don't think it's fair that, the rest of us show up all the time and then someone just isn't. And we kind of need that to be in place. And I'm sorry, Alyssa, I saw your hand here. Are you?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. So you guys don't have the benefit of the feedback that I sent to Monica, but I would definitely be on the side of trying to make this, I guess, similar to the other board that was mentioned, that's leaning more towards more flexibility with the virtual attendance. I think that just as we could have a technology outage, we could have a situation like tonight where, Shay, you were running late because of traffic, right? Those are both situations that could happen that could lead to us not having quorum. And also really great points that everyone's making in terms of we're trying to bring more equity. And for those folks who are either transportation challenged or who are working and just physically not able to get to our meeting but could do it virtually, we don't necessarily want to preclude people who have those different challenges from being available to serve on the board. So I'd be curious to know what the boundaries are of our flexibility and what the other board is considering that's also looking for more flexibility. I'm not sure that I understand the rationale with wanting to have the quorum in the room, but I also kind of question in some ways I question the value, and that's only because we've been doing this work for the past year in a completely virtual manner. I think it is very important to have someone in the room, at least a minimum number of people in the room in order to interface with any guests who happen to choose to come in person. There absolutely needs to be someone there in order to interface with any guests who come in person like that. But I question the idea that the presence in person needs to be there. for the whole board. I would also say that when we start trying to define the list of rules and reasons that qualify you to be virtual or absent that day, then you get the question of, well, who's monitoring the accuracy of that?
Yes.
In other words, I called in and said, I've got to be virtual because I'm sick. But meanwhile, I'm at a hotel in Palm Springs on vacation. Does that now call into question that someone's going to, need to be in a position of monitoring that for a person who is still participating fully in a board meeting? So I'm not sure that I think that we want to really kind of bring that list down to a kindergarten set of rules of, if you have a fever over 102, but it's 101, you should be in person. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure that we need to legislate quite to that level of detail of what qualifies for that. I think that's the bulk of the feedback that is submitted.
Thank you, Alyssa. And Tony, I see your hand up as well. Oh, you're on mute.
I guess I wasn't muted before, so I muted myself when I was about to talk. But I gotta agree with you, Alyssa. Alicia, I gotta agree with you. Initially, I didn't agree, but I would say you really convinced me, um, because I mean, it's absolutely right. I mean, everything that I do is based on, like, if you're going to institute a rule, if you can't quantify and verify whatever rule that you're putting on an individual, then why even have the rule to begin with? I I guess I would say if we were going to put it up for a vote, I would actually kind of like to leave it the same way it is right now, which is basically, let's say for new membership, it would be something of the matter of, while we prefer that our members are in person, but if you need to we're all adults here. So it's like, if you need to, for whatever reason, childcare or whatever, not that it's a rule, you're sick, you're on vacation, but you want to stay so engaged in it that you want to be there for the meeting. Hey, why not join virtually? And I can understand how the mayor feels about, being there in person. I'm kind of that way myself a little bit, depending upon what's going on for myself at work. I'd rather be there to, diplomacy and charisma and talking with someone. But like I said, and like, Alicia said, we're all adults. We could just leave it the same way, the way it is now. Because if I wasn't sick right now, I'd be there in person.
But the way it's now, it's 5 people, right?
Yes, I think that's what Tisha mentioned, was 5 people being in person, at
And
least.
So that's the proposed rule. I think Tony was talking the way it is now, we don't necessarily have it.
Oh, so we don't have it?
We
Oh,
don't-
yeah,
There's no
then I'll
rule
go
right
with that.
now, so there's just the absence of any kind of policy.
Okay. And Kelly, I know you had a
Yeah,
comment.
I'm seconding, Lorna and, I'm forgetting your name. Alicia, and also, anyway, it seems like almost everybody, not everybody. I don't want a lot of rules. I think that it's not equitable. I think bottom line, we are shutting people down because they've got 3 kids and they have to run to the grocery store, and they've got work they've got to do later on tonight. That's reality for pretty much everybody, but for some people, they have a whole lot more piled on. So if we want them to participate, it's got to be easy to come. And come maybe this. And I personally think it works. We're doing it. Maybe because we never got to do it with everybody here, but I used to have a job where we went remote, not during the pandemic, but we made it work. You figure it out. There's just rules you got to set up and figure it out.
Yeah, and I would just, add, I don't necessarily see the value of having a 5-person quorum in room. I think that naturally there's enough people who would want to be in person that they would come just because that's their preference. And so I don't think we need to kind of mandate that. And I think as long as 5 people are available in either way, that should be sufficient for quorum. And I'm thinking about a couple weeks ago with an ice storm. No one wanted to be driving in an ice storm, but the board could have conducted its business, virtually. So there's,
I do want to mention, we are required to have a physical meeting location, which is
Okay.
also an equity issue, right? For someone who doesn't have the technology to participate or doesn't have the
that's fair.
skills.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we will always have an open meeting room. So with the
Okay.
ice storm, we canceled the meeting. We had, not your meeting, someone else's meeting.
Yeah, okay,
That
that's
night,
good.
and Monica, a staff person will need to be here. And so, but that's it. There isn't, state law doesn't dictate, like conceivably all of you could be virtual and Monica's here and the door is open and that satisfies the requirements. You do really have a lot of flexibility.
Okay.
So actually, that was my question to all of you and to you, Tisha. Like, okay, what happens in the case where there's no board member in person? Is the staff sufficient to be here and interact with any possible public members? And is that okay with all of you as a board? But it sounds like from the clerk's perspective, that is sufficient and with.
Yeah, it is legally sufficient. I mean, I think what you've heard me say is definitely that the city's not advocating for that approach. And I do think you provided really great feedback. I think something I would be interested to hear a little bit more about is, so I hear a preference for encouraging in-person attendance, but would there be any, and it sounds like that's maybe all that we want to, is just to encourage it and not put any number on it. But that could mean that in some cases,
point.
it could just be staff and members of the public.
And I don't want a preference. I prefer to come here. And I would have preferred when I had 3 kids and a full-time job, but I wouldn't have been here. And I'm just gonna say that, right? I would have tried, but I wouldn't have been here as much as I am now, right? And so I don't want to put a preference because I'm going back to what you said. There are some people who can't come. And there's some people who can only come here, right? So let's keep it all. Let's just keep it all.
Yeah, I agree. I think having a policy that encourages attendance would discourage some people from even applying, and that's not inclusive. I think one question that I would like to bring up is if there is a situation where there's like only Monica here, how does safety considerations come into play?
Yeah, there aren't any. And I mean, as a staff person, that's something and as a person who helps support the staff that we have throughout the city who are supporting these boards, I do have concern around that. And that's something we'll have to navigate if that seems to be the way things are going. This is in large part an experiment. We've been experimenting a little bit the last few months, but there's been real strong direction to, currently for that in-person attendance. So as that lifts from some of our boards, it will just be observing. And certainly these, so the policy that will eventually be adopted goes into your rules. A majority of you can amend your rules at any time. And, so another hope is that if I'm sure you will find things that could be problematic. We can change them and we'll need to kind of see how it goes. We don't really have a protocol for that because it's not something we've experienced. The city council has been meeting in person since, I believe, March of 2021, and they've felt very strongly, and they're different. They're not advisory, they're governing, they receive compensation. So that's been my most frequent experience, and they're in the room. Most of our boards are typically having a quorum in the room, even though we have a few that have a more heavy virtual attendance, so we'll have to navigate it.
Are there any other boards that were formed at the same time we were?
No.
Right.
No, and so it's been really interesting to hear the conversations, and the thing is, it really is about kind of what you're looking for in your membership. Certainly the mayor and the city council play a role in appointments and making decisions about who's on the board, but as far as the expectations around how the board functions in this way, this is your decision.
Shouldn't we influence the other ones? to other boards. Right, I mean, we're
Well,
talking.
that's a great point, and I was very happy, and I've been trying to share, only 2 of our 13 boards have adopted a policy. The other got 2 or 3, including yours, who are kind of talking about it. I've received some feedback and working on, adjusting it. Very happy to share rationale. Our environmental board had a really interesting discussion, and they're another of the boards that is really looking for more virtual participation or being more allowable with that because of the emissions issue. So, yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah.
And Tisha, I wanted to ask another question too, because do we still have the accommodation for childcare that we were offered last year? And in the spirit of thinking about safety as well, I would think that if none of the board members were able to attend in person, we wouldn't want Monica to be here, just in the spirit of thinking about safety. And then on the other side of that coin, don't we ask the public to let us know that they're attending versus people just kind of randomly showing up?
So the stipend is still in place. And so we have an application for the stipend on our website. And I believe it's $50 per meeting is my recollection. And so that is remaining in place, yes, and regardless of the outcome of this discussion. As far as attending, the public attending, no, we actually really can't require that, and we don't have it. We do have a mechanism for our city council meetings. We encourage advance notice, but really anyone can, and again, based back to that training we had tonight, anyone can walk in the door at any time and participate. So sometimes we'll get some, I think Monica probably has the experience where sometimes as staff will kind of get a heads up that people are coming to the meeting, they'll be reaching out to us, but other times it's just unknown until the meeting time.
Okay, and Alyssa, I see your hand up. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, it's like a battle trying to remember to take your hand down and also unmute. I think from a public safety perspective, I think that's actually a separate issue. And the reason is that all of us board members could be in the room. And if someone's going to come in the room with ill intent, unless, I don't know, Tony is going to tackle the guy and protect us all, I don't imagine me doing. So I think that the issue of public safety is definitely an important one, but I think that is a broader discussion, and I don't think it becomes more or less safe with, several board members in the room. But I think it's a very important issue that should be dealt with. Shay, you mentioned the childcare stipend. I think that whether a board member came to us and was having a childcare person in their home in order to watch their child while they were virtual, or whether they were dropping that child off, try to have a meeting with a 6-month-old or a 1-year-old at your feet, right? I think the stipend still potentially is relevant whether the person is virtual or not.
Thank you. Oh, such robust conversation. Anyone else? Christina, I don't think we've heard from you yet.
No, yo sin comentarios, la verdad que sí tengo algunos impedimentos y ya todos lo saben, pero si se requiere en persona, pues le entro.
Well, yeah, I just, I really don't have much to say, but, as many of you know, I do have some challenges. But if the requirement is that I need to be in person, yes, I'll go in. I'm in for it.
Y ustedes saben y han visto que las veces que he faltado, pues son pocas, y las veces que he podido estar en persona, creo han estado 3, 4 veces máximo. He estado de esas veces una, cuando no se me esperaba que estuviera en persona.
And so I think, I like to participate. I think I've only missed one meeting overall. And from the 3 or 4 non-virtual meetings, I think I've made one, and I made that one even though I wasn't expected to be there.
Entonces, no tengo ningún inconveniente, más sin embargo, sí creo que es importante lo que comentan y pues hay que considerar que no todos estamos en las mismas circunstancias.
And there's not really, it's not very convenient for me to be in person, but I think that it is very important what you all are saying about the issues. And yeah, we all have so many different circumstances in our life.
Entonces, estoy de acuerdo en dejarlo abierto también para que no haya nada específico.
And yes, I'm in agreement to leave it open on nothing to be specified about the issue.
Por otro lado, hay algo que me tiene un poco confundida. Es referente al punto anterior que estaba comentando Tisha.
And I
Es
have another,
referente
I have a thing that is I'm kind of confused about. It's a point that Tisha was talking about before.
acerca de las redes sociales.
And this is about the social media.
Hubo un flyer en el que se trabajó con el comité más reducido.
We have a flyer that the smaller committee had worked on.
Y yo hice digamos, un esquema donde había varias preguntas y estaba el teléfono y el correo de Mónica y lo compartí en las redes sociales a manera de invitar al público para venir a nuestras reuniones.
And so what I did, I kind of made a sketch of different points, and I also included Monica's phone number and email so that, and I posted it in social media, and I was trying to gain public participation.
Ahora estoy preocupada si debo 500 o $1,000 o más.
So now I'm worried that I owe $500, $1,000, or even more.
Este flyer lo tiene Mónica, no creo que sea nada como muy específico o algo que no se deba de platicar en público, más sin embargo sí quería compartirlo para que estemos todos transparentes y claros.
And that flyer Monica has it, and it's nothing that specific, but I did wanted to bring it up so that it's all clear and it's all transparent.
Y si quieren, se los muestro y se los envío a todos.
And if you would all like, I would show it to you, show the flyer to you all and send it to you as well.
All right, Christina, well, that's a great question. That is, so you're promoting something. I know Monica can always help you promote things through our city social media accounts, but it's absolutely okay to promote city events on your account too. What you really want to avoid is conversation and commenting or discussing on social media on a topic, especially with the board members, but just putting information out there, and maybe they like, if they like the posting, that's fine. Just don't start discussing or dialoguing in the chat or the comments. Avoid that.
About that topic.
Correct.
Entendido.
Or any equity related
Or
topic.
any,
So
yes.
I have an example in mind.
Okay, good,
Yes.
please.
So for example, Christina, you put the flyer out that talks about the equity board, right? And then maybe somebody says, oh, I have a complaint to make because somebody used the slur while I was crossing today, and I want to talk about it. And maybe one board member says, oh, that's a great topic, Christina, let's talk about it. And maybe now Kelly shares in, yes, let's put it on our work plan, let's say, right? So
Right.
That is something that you want to avoid discussing. Instead, what you can do, perhaps you see the comment that a public member made, and you can bring it to the board meeting next time and say, hey, this is what I saw on social media. Can we discuss about this? What can we do about it? Right?
That's exactly right. And that is why we really encourage, if you're doing big promotion, use our city social media and our communications team, because they're their job is to monitor our social media and respond to people in appropriate ways. So we want you to use that, but certainly sharing is fine. That's a great example. Yeah, the response can be, I'll bring this up at the equity board, or you know, or message me directly if you want to talk about this more. Yeah. Yes. Great question.
Thank you, Monica. That was a great example. Yeah. Alrighty, do we have any more comments or questions related to the attendance policy? Any more recommendations that we'd like to offer to Tisha to make sure she can help us draft a better option?
I'm still processing. How do we insert our conversation before it went to everybody else? Because this is how we, you know, this isn't like this isn't hard. People could have adopted a flexible policy if they had heard this, if they had gone through the framework, if they had been guided, the mayor had discussed it with us. You know, I'm trying to think through, how do we make this more in the process, as opposed to, yeah, we're better. You know, we've thought it through, we had to think it through, but we could have helped others. How do we do this? Because that's our job, in my view, is trying to help the others. And so maybe somehow we get floated to the top for new stuff, just to get an equity view. Doesn't mean everybody agrees with it, but you at least hear it, right? I don't know. I'm trying to sort this out.
Kelly, that's a good point. Alyssa, I saw your hand up.
I just had a question about next steps. I know that I think there's a vote or some formal at some point on the policy, but I'm not sure. So just wanted to know what the next steps are.
Yeah, so I'd like to summarize what I heard tonight, and then I'll work with Monica to see if there's any capacity at your February meeting to have a short amount of time to bring forward the changes, and then you would need to take a vote to amend your rules and regulations. But tonight, my plan was to hear feedback, and if there was significant feedback, to return before a vote is taken. So this was just, tonight was a discussion. I definitely hear a lot of consensus. I wanted to actually ask you, Alyssa, I wrote down 2 other points that you brought up in your email communication. Wanted to know if you wanted to have any feedback from the board on them. One was you felt that sharing could occur in person or virtually, and right now the draft says that the chair has to be in person, so you were questioning that. And the other point you were questioning was the camera on. The policy says that has strong wording about encouraging camera on if you're attending virtually. So do you want to get feedback on that?
Sure. So camera on, I think it's great to encourage it. I just think that we just don't need to legislate it down to the smallest detail of, you know, we generally do try to say, well, you know, if there's a reason we need to take our camera off for a second, like Ray just did, right? We tried to, I mean, I'm sorry, not Ray, Tony just did, that we, you know, say something, but I just don't know that we need to legislate it down to the smallest detail of letting someone know every time that happens. And the other point was the chair. I think what we've said is, even in our follow-up conversation, was that it may be that it works fine if all the board members happen to be virtual, as long as there is a person in the room to greet the any visitors who are there, including the chair. I think Shay has done a great job chairing, and Monica, you know, when we first started the meetings, whether virtual or in the room, and probably could make the meeting a little bit more just sort of like tonight's meeting, where you know, let's say that we were trying to find a person to chair because our chair wasn't physically in the room at that moment. A little different situation. But, you know, if our chair was going to be virtual, and then we're figuring out who's going to chair, and, you know, having to spend the first few minutes of the meeting, even though the chair is present virtually, you know, it seems a bit wasteful of time.
Thank you, Alyssa. Christina, I see your hand up. I'd like to get your comment in. And Ray, if you have a comment, I'd like to hear from you as well.
Solamente quería aclarar también otro punto importante acerca de qué va a pasar o cómo se va a establecer la fecha siguiente para la reunión que no se tenga cuando el quórum no se complete.
So, yeah, I just want to clarify something. What happens in the next meeting when, for instance, there's no quorum?
¿Cuándo va a ser la fecha siguiente? Creo que eso ha habido conflictos para establecerlo con Mónica, por eso quisiera que igual podría quedar claro que si no es el primer miércoles, porque no se completó el quórum, sea el siguiente miércoles, segundo miércoles del mes, o cómo quedaría.
And
Sería
yes,
bueno aclararlo.
so yeah, I think that the date, I'm talking about the date, if it's going to be the first Wednesday, the second Wednesday, there's not been a consensus decision about that if there's no quorum. I think it's a good time to clear that one out too.
So for now, that's why, as you may have seen, I'm trying to send email reminders because I'm trying to establish that we have a quorum before. We are trying to do some planning before each meeting to make sure that we have quorum. In a situation where we wouldn't have a quorum, then we would need to cancel the meeting. So that's why I'm trying on my end, and I always ask you, please let me know if you plan to be off next month or next week, so then we can plan for quorum. But typically, if we don't have quorum, we would cancel the meeting. And what I'm trying to do on my end, and I'm trying to do my best, is to avoid a situation where we don't know who's absent and we come here and we only have 2 or 3 people total. We don't have a quorum and we need to send them home. So I think we're trying to plan in advance a little bit. But as of we have it now, if there's no quorum, we cancel the meeting. Does that help, Christina?
Sí, solamente vi que estaba habiendo complicaciones luego a ponernos de acuerdo, por eso sería bueno tal vez tener 2 opciones para ver cuál puede, en qué fecha puede la mayoría y decidir que es esa fecha definitiva y ahorrarte trabajo, digámoslo así.
Yeah, so yeah, it's because, it doesn't seem to be an agreement amongst us. And so, I just wanted to find out which one or the other date would work for us. I know I was thinking to do that just to save you some work.
No, thank you. For now, though, it's always the first Wednesday of each month. These are our established meetings. The first Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. Yes. Great question.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, Ray, did you have anything?
Just one. We all, just piggybacking off of what you just said, we all know that this occurs on the first Wednesday of every month. We're all professionals here. We all have calendars. So why don't we just look 12 months out and say, I for sure cannot make this date. And we make a roster of those who we know can be physically present and hold those accountable to being here present at those dates. And if for some reason they cannot, have the respect to give you at least a week, maybe 2 weeks notice saying, I have a vacation that came up and I cannot be there physically. That way we have some understanding of who's going to be here outside present.
Thank you. With the understanding that there are also things that sometimes come up that they're last moment. And again, like you said, we are all adults and we understand that. But yes, I appreciate any heads up that you can give me. And also I thank you for the flexibility of dealing with me every time. I'm like, are you gonna be able to make it? Can you respond? Please respond.
Thank you, Monica. Lorna, do you have something as well?
Yes, so I was just gonna say in response to the cameras on and off, while I'm 100% okay with the meetings being, Zoom as whoever needs it, I really do think there is a portion of cameras on being important. And I think it is, you can turn your camera off on occasionally. And again, this is a quantifying thing. So how do we put a number on that? I would say 50% or less, the camera is off. It's just at some point, I think one of the reasons it worked with us, this is my opinion, during Zoom is that we did have an expectation that camera was going to be on. And all of us on occasion, when we're sick or coughing or something, or eating, hiding, taking a bite, we might have turned our camera off. But for me, these are very vital, difficult conversations sometimes. And for me especially, it is an important thing to see faces as I'm having this conversation, to be able to build trust and to have the ability to have some of these difficult conversations. And for public coming in, it would also be important for public to see that. And you have different backgrounds. We've had car backgrounds, totally okay. We've had, blurred backgrounds. You can have any kind of background. I know that that's something people can even do on their phone. So that to me is not as much of an equity issue. But it is a trust and relationship building issue. So for me, that part really is more important. And so I would like to make sure that we don't say, it doesn't matter if your camera is off through the whole meeting. I think there is a component of that part is important.
Thank you, Maureen. Alyssa?
So I don't disagree about that for this meeting, that that this group definitely feels more comfortable having the cameras on. That said, as an African American woman in technology, and one who has a fair amount of gray hair, I have both the race, the age, and the gender to deal with in terms of bias. And I have greatly appreciated when I have worked in an environment where my camera was off, because it has allowed me to build more connection with the people I was working with virtually, because they weren't distracted by, oh, why am I listening to this African American woman? What does she know? And so that said, I would just say, keep an open mind to the other ways in which we are visually biased, whether it is because of weight, whether it is height, whether it is race or nationality. There are so many ways in which we are visually biased, and that happens in a setting that is virtual and as well as in person. So not recommending that we turn our cameras off at all, just recommending that we don't heavily legislate it. That's all. I think it's fine for this group, but I personally have had opportunities to build greater connection with people when they are not focused on my visual demographics. And just wanted to make that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I have a question for you, Tisha. Earlier you had said there's like a set of rules, and the rules that we have right now are when we meet and how long it is, and we have quorum. That is essentially a working document for us. That's interesting, because that means that at any time when we have a problem, we can solve the problem and use that working document, right? And so this is going incorporating a little bit, given how much we're saying. Okay, that helps me to understand how this works, and that we can, as we go along, alter it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Good point. And Tony, I see you. And then if possible, I think we're running a little low on time, so we may need to table this conversation. But Tony, please.
Sure, I'll be brief. I'll be very brief. I put it in chat, but I was wondering if we're going to vote on this, so let's say in terms of the rules, and have certain options, whether it be keep going the way we've been going, or should the chair be there in person, should the vice chair be in person, all those rules and different things we want to do. Does that have to be in a public setting, or can we just vote on it virtually, Outlook poll or whatever, during the week or during the next week or something?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So this, again, goes back to our Open Public Meetings Act training. So your discussion and action has to occur in an open public meeting. So I know sometimes efficiency, sometimes that means that we have to put efficiency in the back seat a little bit, but so there's transparency in the public process. So I will hope to be brief. I really, really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the lens with which you were looking at this tonight. So I really want to thank you for the time, and we'll try and not take much time at your next meeting when we look for your final action on this.
Before moving forward, I just want to elevate something, and perhaps Tisha, maybe when you return, you can incorporate it, because what I heard from all of you tonight, there were actually two separate discussions, one detailed discussion on this policy, but also something that Kelly, you brought up, is the bigger picture of how does the equity board inform certain policies at the city,
Yes.
right? And I just want to make sure that that doesn't get lost, because I think I heard the same issue brought up in the past by other board members, and while you didn't have time to talk so much about it, I know that there's consistency among board members on that. So I know it's not easy, but
yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I think there is an element of this that we're frequently as staff looking at that public access and equity issue, but the board members it's a little bit of a unique position. You serve at the pleasure of the mayor, you're confirmed by the council, but you have these very specific areas of purview, and your area of purview could really help, I think, enlighten both us as staff and our other boards. So I think, yeah, it's a worthwhile conversation. I will, as I meet with other boards, I mean, you gave me a lot to think about, and I definitely will not be shy in sharing some of your rationale. And just to quickly sum up, what I heard from most of you tonight is that you want a really open policy that really doesn't dictate how or when you are virtual or in person. You don't want a number. You're not going to be requiring certain criteria. So that's what I will aim for, and it will probably give you one of the more open policies in the city, and that's something that we can, share and learn from. So, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
To Kelly's point, we can adjust if we need to.
Yes.
So, thank you so much, Tisha. I think we got a lot of good information out of that. So, looking forward to seeing what the new policy looks like. It looks like we're down to our staff report. I'm sorry, did anyone else have any other comments, questions? All right, then we'll move to the staff report, and Monica's gonna lead us there, and then we'll prepare to adjourn.
after some announcements.
Oh, yes, after the announcements, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Tisha. Thank you, Tisha. So thank you so much, board members. There are just a couple of, not necessarily, I don't have a formal report. There are a couple of things that were brought up that I wanted to spend a few minutes in discussing. And one, thank you so much, Priti, for bringing this up. As you may recall, at the last meeting, we had a great conversation about our work plan items for 2023. And we decided you, as a board, you identified from the board proposed items, you identified 4 as of priorities for 2023. And we decided to have a smaller ad hoc committee work on detailing the scope of work for those. So just wanted to bring you a quick update that Priti, Kelly, and Lisa and I had a chance to discuss and meet in person, not in person, we just had a brief meeting, Kelly, Priti, and I, and then we also looped in Lisa via email. And we are working on those details, and we hope to bring it back to you at the next meeting. However, during the conversation, Priti brought up a really great suggestion that we wanted to bring to you as a board. If you recall, last year you had helped inform the equity framework for the city, which currently is still in the process of being implemented. And Priti said, why not start using the equity framework and the guiding questions in any decisions that the board is asked to weigh in? For example, you did it so well tonight without necessarily noticing, but you did it with the virtual policy, yes. Right? So I think that is something that you can continue doing with all the other questions and all the other policies that will be brought to you this year if you're interested. But I just wanted to bring that to you. I also emailed it to you, and I can make sure that we can publish it in each of the agenda items moving forward, so you have it kind of like always at the forefront. But I want to pause to just get a little bit of thoughts and consensus from all of you. Is that something that you're all interested in trying to use? And
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I think we're kind of all in agreement on that.
And I think we need to internalize those framework topics so that we take that, as we use it, people can see what we're doing and it becomes something that sets a tone
yes.
for the work in equity.
And as we are also just piloting it, as Pri said it so well, it also gives you the opportunity to try it and see what's working and what's not working, so then you can make recommendations to improve it, right? Okay, so it sounds like moving forward, I'll just add, you have it now in the email, but I will add it to all of the agenda packets, so kind of you have it as a guide. And so with that, just going back a little bit more to the 2022 work plan, as we talked, you have 4 items that you identified as a board. And as you may recall, and again, moving forward, each of the agenda packets, I'm going to make sure that the work plan is also going to be there, so you have it, and kind of like we are going to try each month to focus on what are we going to tackle. I wanted to give you a heads up that items that are brought by other departments, that is a moving target, and that list is growing. So just wanted to give you a brief heads up that I had a quick meeting just a couple of days ago with our deputy city administrator, as they are starting to work on the capital improvement plan for the city, also known as a short, you might have heard it already, as CIP. And so that will be brought to you as an equity board for discussion. And what the city is going to try to do this year, it's going to be a little bit different. We are going to try for February or March to have a joint meeting with 3 other boards. So it's going to be a 4-board joint meeting between the equity board, park board, environmental board, and transportation board. So details are being worked out. I'm going to let you know as soon as possible. And that's going to be a first touch point for the boards that influence and have some sort of relationship with the capital improvement plan, just to give you an overview and set help staff select the criteria for evaluation. And then a few months later, that item will be brought back to you. I believe we are scheduled for the month of May, to be brought back to you just as a single board to weigh in further. So this is just one example. I'm just letting you know, as all the other departments are adding their workload and work plan for 2023, that list is going to be kind of like a moving target. And as you remember, we have already several other big agenda items that the city's been working on that they're going to be brought to you. But again, great opportunity to use the equity framework for those. So I'm excited about what this year is going to bring to you all, but I think just get ready. It's going to be a busy year.
So exciting.
Big items. So very exciting.
And they'll have worked through the framework before they come to us.
No, the framework has not been implemented at the city. So I cannot say that. Maybe some staff that might have more knowledge or training, maybe, perhaps, but don't assume that anyone worked through the framework before coming to you.
And when will the framework be implemented?
As soon as training is going to be provided to all staff. So again, I think you as a board have an opportunity to start implementing it and influence and inform, including training. So we are waiting. I think the HR department is working on a plan for training the entire staff.
Will there be a different trainer? Or is Shannon?
I'm not sure yet who and how that's going to be implemented. I know HR is working on that. So as soon as I have more information, I'll bring it to you.
So can they do it without being trained, just for the practice of the walkthrough?
So that is something that we can recommend as a board. And I think it's going to depend in some internal meetings, as we have, remember, we have an equity internal team and we offer to help train staff. We made suggestions similar to what you're saying. And I think the comfort level, it's different from staff to staff and department, different departments vary on their comfort level.
I would personally hate to give them a tool and then have them misuse it and then say that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or have negative consequences because that group or some people were using it not inappropriately, but without full fidelity.
Right.
So I think sometimes there needs to be a conversation in how to use the tool and how to look at that and what lens and perspective, because a lot of that is on lens and perspective work. And I honestly don't know all the boards to know if they've done all the lens and perspective work to do that.
Right. No, and I doubt it. I'm just trying to figure out when we bring it up, if they don't have lens and perspective, they're gonna get pissed. Let me make it clear. So what are we getting it set up for? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out what we're getting set up, because those are huge projects. We don't know what we're talking about. We don't understand it. We won't even be able to, we'll just get a top level, and then we're gonna be asking questions that probably don't make sense, because we don't make sense either.
But I think it will make sense, because
Right.
just as Tisha said, she was like, oh, you're bringing up things that they hadn't, but we did it, I feel like seamlessly, rather than very checkboxy, which that might happen for newbies who have not gone through work on looking at bias, perspective, and different lenses. And so I think seeing as you ask questions and it seems seamless, but just say, this is what we should always be considering, and having it, the forefront, not in the back, but the forefront of your thoughts as you're analyzing plans, projects, strategies being brought to you. So I don't think if they don't have that there, I don't want to rush it and cause damage or harm.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Lorna, we'll lead the charge when it comes to how they should be processing the framework. And if we, just like tonight, when we just automatically went through the framework, not even realizing we were doing it, we'll be able to do the same for them and give them the option to question why we're telling them these things, or why we're asking them these questions. So I think that, to Lorna's point, we want to make sure that they use the framework correctly, and the proper training is the only way to help them get there. But we can definitely give them the examples that they need to try to work through it before they get the training.
And you have an opportunity as the board to, again, test it and pilot it and then inform. Yeah.
So one thing that I'm thinking about that, Kelly just noted is, so like a capital improvement plan, it's a topic area that many of us aren't familiar with, and there could be more value to the joint meeting if we had some, preparation and some content around how that all works, so then we can contribute more effectively.
And that's the purpose of the joint meeting, is basically to inform you, to give you the information that you need, so then when it comes back to you, you have what you need to inform, right? And that's exactly the purpose, is for you not to have the knowledge, it's for you to bring the equity lens, right?
Sorry, I had to laugh because I was like, should I put my jacket on? Yeah, it's so close.
And I was like, what's that noise? Is that rain? Is that?
So how do you envision this? So I don't think I even envision it. So I see a Zoom meeting probably for the 4 groups. That's pretty funny, right?
So that's why they're trying to work out the details. In an ideal world, I know that they're gonna try to do it in person, but they don't. I think, again, the city is acknowledging that they would like to do something different, and they're gonna try to do something different. So that's the extent. We just got a little bit of like, okay, this is an important topic. We would need information. We want to hear from the equity board. We want to hear from the environmental board. We need to hear from the transportation board, and then the same with parks board, because they do a lot of capital projects. So how can we get everyone together to give them the same information, be very clear on what we need from the boards, what their role is, give them an opportunity to ask questions so they understand, so that when we come back, then they can provide information. So I think I'm excited because I think it's a step forward, right? And I'm always excited when a department comes and say, oh, we are working on this. I think we don't know exactly how, but it would be helpful to hear from the equity board. So I still consider that as a positive, right?
So do you think with a meeting that large, we would be looking at an extended meeting versus our standard 2 hours?
So we are looking at definitely still not, it's gonna be a separate meeting than our February meeting. So we are gonna have our meeting in February, our regular meeting, and this is gonna be an addition if the meeting is in February. If they're not able to meet in February as I think a proposed tentative date is February 16 or so. I know, I don't know what's going on outside. Or it may be in March. So as soon as I have more details, I'll let you know, but it's gonna be a separate meeting just on that topic. And then I see, yes, Alyssa.
Alyssa? Oh, you're on mute again.
Sorry, I was just gonna put it in the chat. I have to drop, and I know we're over time, and I would recommend that if we think we need more discussion on this topic, which is important, that we add it to a future agenda.
Great point,
Thank you,
Alyssa.
Alyssa.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Alrighty, and Monica, that leads to our announcements. Do we have anything else?
Alyssa, I don't know if you still have 5 seconds. Some of you, and I will connect with all of you individually, we can also talk next month, but there are a few of you whose terms are expiring this year. So starting in February, the city is going to start the recruitment process for new boards and commissions. And so those of you whose terms are expiring this year, please connect with me if you're interested in continuing on the board, or if you're interested in not continuing on the board. Just the same, please get in touch with me. And also, this is the time when there might be board members whose terms are not expiring, but then they also have conflicts and they are no longer able to serve. Let's just continue individual conversations and in the meetings as well. That's all. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Anyone else have any questions or comments? If not, then we're ending a little over time, but we're going to adjourn. Thanks everybody for being here. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening.
And I'm sorry, Alyssa, I think you asked for a reminder on something. I'm sorry, I popped off before I had a chance to read it.
Yeah, it was just a matter of when our terms are expiring, because I personally don't remember, so I don't know if others do.
Okay.
Okay. If you have a couple of minutes, I do have them. I did have them in front of me. Alyssa, actually, your term expires in 2023, as well as Kelly's and Pretty's. In 2024, we have Lorna and Helen and Lucrecia, and in 2025, we have Ray, Shay, and Tony, and Christina, we have you in 2026 with expirations.
All right.
But in 2023, we have Pretty, Alyssa, and Kelly. And you can renew, it's just we need to talk through that so you can redo the application.
Awesome.
Thank you, board
thank you all
members.
for attending. We're adjourning at 8:04.
Well, drive safely, everyone.
Yes.
See you